This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Shalom Aleichem. We're continuing in our Sedra in the Orchos Chaim of the Rosh. We're up to Ois Lamed Zayin. Says the Rosh, Lamed Parshos Sechem at Tzibor. One should learn the Parshos with the Tzibor, Shnayim Mikra v'Yachad Targum. Twice the Chumash and once the Targum. Now, this of course is Gemara in Masechta Brachos that says, La'olam yashlim adam parshosim atzibor. Always a person should complete his parshas with the tzibor shekol hamashlim parshosav im atzibor ma'arichin lo yamav u'shnaisav. The lashon of the Gemara is la'olam, always, which doesn't sound like it's an absolute obligation. It sounds like it's recommended. But then if you look in the Torah says tzarech, you should. And if you look in the Shulchan Aruch says chayiv, you're obligated. So it's important to know that when a Gemara says la'olam, in halacha it's taken that you're chayiv. And this is something that is weak in by many people. In fact, the siman in Shulchan Aruch that discusses the mitzvah of Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum is Reish Pei Hey Rafa, indicating that this is a area of halacha that is Rafa bi'adenu. It's not so strong in people's eyes. Now, what's the reason for the halacha? The Levush says the Rebbeinu Shalom wants us to be baki in the Torah. The Rebbeinu Shalom wants us to be proficient in the psukim of the Torah. The Aruch HaShulchan says that the Torah was taught on Sinai, repeated in the Oyel Moed, thrice repeated in the Arvos Moav. So, to reenact the way the Torah was given, so to speak, 3 times, we learn the parsha 3 times. And it says that, the Gemara says that one who is mashlim the parshas with the tzibur, ma'arichim lo yamav u'shnaisav, which means that not only will a person's quantity of life improve, but the quality of life will improve as well. So they once asked the Rabbi Baruch Ber if he's aware of any kula. Not many people are maver sedra. Is there any leniency that they rely on? He says the only leniency he knows of is the leniency of Rav Huna. I said, what? What's the leniency of Rav Huna? Yeah, Rav Huna says in Masechta Yuma, Kivan sha'avar adam avera v'shana hutra lai. When a person does an avera and he repeats it again, it becomes mutter to him. What that means is the person begins to rationalize that it's mutter. So in other words, there's no real heter. Now, the Rosh says one should also do it with Rashi. Interesting, if somebody's maver sedra with Rashi, we know when one learns the psukim, you need to articulate the words. When you say the Targum, you need to articulate. How about when you learn Rashi? He brings from Rav Nissen Karelitz that one would have to say the words, and other achronim are lenient that if you learn Rashi, you could learn it in your mind. Now, it's very interesting, even though technically one is definitely Yotze with the Targum, the Chafetz Chaim in his letters writes that nowadays the limud of Chumash and Rashi has supplanted the Targum. He says in the times of the Gemara, the Targum was considered a very chashuva limud because people understood the Chumash by learning the Targum. Masha'en came nowadays that we're not Yotze, the Chafetz Chaim says, just by learning Targum, because most people don't understand it, and you need to use a commentary such as Rashi. Now, Chafetz Chaim interestingly writes in the Zachar LaMiriam that the Eitzah that will be mechazik emuna in a person's heart is to learn Chumash together with Rashi and be very medaktek in it. Now, in terms of the segula that kol hamashim parshiyosav imatzibor ma'arichin lo yamav u'shnoisav, the Gemara tells us that Rav Bibi bar Abaye, he wanted to spend the whole Erev Yom Kippur being Maver Sedra. Why did he want to be Maver Sedra every Yom Kippur, because since every Yom Kippur the Sifrei Chaim, the Sifrei Mesim, Psuchim, so he wanted to be involved in that which is Marichin Yamav Ushnoisav. Furthermore, Rabbi Bar Abaye was a descendant of Abaye, and there was a Gzeira on Abaye that he would die, his descendants would die young, and therefore to overcome and to counteract that klala that was on the family of Abaye, so Rav Bibi would specifically be Maver Sedra on Erev Yom HaKippurim. In fact, I heard from Rav Olbaum Shlita that Rav Shaul Brach was a great Rosh Yeshiva in Hungary, who was a Marbitz Torah for many, many decades. He said the reason he was Zoicha to live so long was because every single week he was makbid to be Maver the Sedra. Even though he had many, many zechusim that he could have hinged it on, but he chose to hinge it on that which the Gemara says explicitly, that someone who's medakdik in this area, ma'arichin loy yamav ushnaisav. And then the Rosh adds, it's not enough just to read Rashi, but v'tedakdik boy ka'asher tuchal. One should be medakdik in the words of Rashi to the extent that one is able. And even though there are so many commentaries on the Chumash, but he commanded to medaktik specifically in Rashi. As we know, every single word of Rashi is so precious, as the Chidah brings down in the Shem HaGedolim, Mareches Shin Ois Daled, that the Chidah says he heard that when Rashi composed his parish on Chumash, he fasted 613 fasts, and as Rabbeinu Tam said to his grandson, that what my grandfather Rashi wrote on Shas, that I could do. But the commentary that Rashi wrote on Chumash, that I can never do, as tradition has it, that Rashi fasted 613 Tanesim before he wrote the commentary Al HaTorah. So we'll continue in this next time, but the Rosh then applies this to Gemara, and we'll finish up Yom Beis, Bezos Hashem Yisbarach, tomorrow. And until then, I wish everyone a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow at 5:30. Bracha v'hatzlacha.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.